So I love the Dark Souls games, it's my favorite franchise of all time. So you can imagine I got pretty happy seeing someone modded SOLAIRE in the Slay the Spire. And I can say after using him for a bit, I'm kind of conflicted about it. The character is really strange. It's all about trying to keep buffs on yourself and debuffs and manipulating these buffs and debuffs in different ways. For instance, the starting relic for this character, you gain strength and dexterity depending on the cards you play each turn. If you don't play any skills, then you'll gain 1 dexterity the following turn, and if you don't play any attacks, you'll gain 1 strength the following turn. With this in mind, a lot of cards are sort of balanced around this notion, and as such, you'll have some cards that will activate an effect if you don't play them. But that also makes it really weird to use this character, because you're incentivized to play as few cards as you can, but at the same time you need to play cards in order to block or attack. So this character is just kind of built for setting yourself up to scale. But they're also set up for survivability. Cards this character starts with cost 2 energy. One does damage, but then also gives you a regen effect, and the other one blocks and makes it so that your next attack does a little more damage. It doesn't have to be this turn, it can be whenever for that. Immediately the mod creator is trying to tell you through gameplay, hey, this character, they're going to need some time to set up. They're going to need a little bit of momentum in order to work properly. And what I notice is that early game, this character struggles a lot. Early in the game, you're not going to have a lot of cards, you're not going to have a lot of sustainability because, well, you just don't have anything better than strikes and defends mainly. Which means some turns early on, you're just really destined not to do well. But he does start with a regen card like I said, which means theoretically you could continue to get full health after just about every combat. The problem is that in practice it's a lot harder to actually do, of course. And like I said before, you're actually incentivized to try and only play attacks or only play skills on some turns. That way you can get your character to scale. You can get strength, you can get dexterity, whatever you're looking for. That does make this character's powers a lot more useful because these powers don't count as a skill or as an attack. They are its own thing. And from what I've seen, this character's powers are actually really strong. One card I found, for example, was called Prudence. For every card that's still in your hand by the end of your turn, you actually gain block off of. So if you're able to draw and keep a lot of cards in your hand, then, well, you can get a whole bunch of block at the end of your turn. Another one I found was actually really interesting. You would draw more cards every single turn, but you could only play so much, kind of like a mini Velvet Choker. Initially I thought, wow, that sounds like a terrible card, but when I thought about it, that's actually really good for this character. If you're trying to play as few cards as possible, or only very specific cards, if you're drawing more every turn, then, well, you just play the ones you need and then you start scaling. And the later you get into the floors with this character, the better he becomes. You'll have more cards available that are stronger than your starting deck, and it lets you set up way easier. When you have your starting card with the regen, well, it becomes way easier just to regenerate all your health after every fight because enemies have more health. I found that this character likes to take a long time in every combat. Now, of course, I don't know this character super well or anything. I only did a couple runs with him. But my early impressions tell me he's pretty interesting. Albeit kinda hard in the early game and maybe a bit annoying to even get going with. It does make me curious, if I play this character more, what kind of playstyles could I find using him? I'm guessing you can probably build decks where you ignore the side effect of cards where it says, hey, if you don't play me, I do this thing instead. Or you can just have a deck that's built entirely around that notion of not playing your cards as much as possible. I was also seeing a lot of cards that debuff yourself, and I mention this because those cards are actually pretty strong, with the drawback obviously being you debuff yourself, such as Vulnerable or Frail. But there were also cards I saw that would counteract that and play around with these debuffs. One I found early was saying that you could take poison off of yourself and heal. Or you take poison off of yourself and you get a poison potion back, or you apply poison to everybody, including yourself. But I also found some cards that are borderline broken. One card, for instance, was an X-Cost card. For every energy you use on the card, you gain a buffer where you just take 0 damage. So imagine that I found that card and immediately thought, if I have 4 or 5 energy and I just use this attack, I'm basically never getting hit in normal combats. Mix that with some health regen, and you're just healing back every fight at that point. And the upgrade on it is X+1, so it just becomes infinitely better. My favorite card I found, though, is called Wrath of Gods. Wrath of God, or Wrath of the Gods, I don't know the specific wording, but it's a spell from the original Dark Souls 1 as well. And it's kind of funny because the photo on the card is a screenshot from Dark Souls 1 where the character's using Wrath of the Gods on a group of pygmies. But this card was also really strong. It was actually another X cost card. For every energy you put into the card, you're dealing attack and blocking. Not only that, you could upgrade the card a seemingly infinite number of times. It's just like Searing Blow for the Ironclad, but way better. And because it only counts as an attack card, that means you can scale your dexterity if that's the only card you play that turn. It's also an uncommon card, not even a rare card, and it's that strong. Overall, this character is just a strange mixed bag of things going on. It's like a pseudo poison build, but also a bunch of debuffs and buffs and so much happening here. But the best thing is, it's not complicated at all. I also found two cards that I thought were pretty interesting. One was called Light Roll, and of course if you've played a Souls game, rolling is how you dodge. But what this card does was you would gain 5 block and then apply 1 weak to the enemy, but then it exhausts and adds a copy back to your hand. Which means you could play this card as many times as you want in one turn and just stack debuffs on an enemy. You know, until you run out of energy, of course. And on the other side of things, there is a card that I don't remember the name of that would attack and inflict vulnerable, but then also do the same thing, exhaust and add a copy back to your hand, so you could keep using it until you run out of energy. So you can use this character with lots of energy, or you can use this character with a little bit of energy. Seems to be quite a number of ways to play this character. And I liked how some of the cards were just throwbacks to the actual game. Another one was Fat Roll, which is the worst kind of rolling in the game, but it actually gives you really good benefit as a card. You can either use it to block, or you can not use it and draw one more card the next turn. All in all, I think this is a character I might have to come and check out again. Just a couple of runs isn't doing any justice to this character, it seems. However, I will have to admit, I was a little frustrated with this character time to time. I think it boiled down to the early game being kind of frustrating, but also not really knowing how to build a deck properly. It felt like a lot of cards weren't really worth taking early on. I guess it came down to a lot of cards feeling like they're too specific. For instance, if you find a card that says it's going to heal your poison early on, and that's really all it does, well, there's not really any enemies that are going to poison you, so you're just kind of stuck with a useless card, right? That's just something you wouldn't want until you have something that generates poison on yourself. But one thing I did forget to mention is that this character comes with a new status ailment, and it's called Fear. And it seems like Fear is a different form of intangibility. You see, when you apply Fear onto an enemy, I believe it makes them do 2 damage instead of whatever they were going to do. Which means saving your Fear cards for specific turns can be really good. Think of it like having apparitions in your deck. It's there to save you on the turns you need them. But, of course, because this character is so much about buffing and debuffing, including themselves, there's also cards that will inflict fear onto yourself. I think it's pretty cool they went out of their way to invent a whole new status ailment just for this character. Not only that, but also introducing a new potion to the game that makes it so that you can inflict fear with it. So if this character at all looks interesting or sounds interesting to you, I'm going to leave a link in the description to the Steam Workshop page. And that way you can check it out all you want. Other than that, I'm going to have a collage playing in the background now because this is day 15 of my daily uploads up until Christmas, so that means 10 days left. Can you believe that? Other than that, I don't really have anything else to say, so if you liked what you saw, leave a like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff because there's going to be more on the way. And with that, take care. See ya.